Hello. So yeah, I'm Philippe Pasquier, and I'm a professor at the School for Interactive Arts and Technology at Fraser University, and I'm also the director of the Metacreation Lab for Creative AI. And in the last 10 years or so, we've really been focusing on using AI and machine learning for creative tasks in the lab. And mostly we've been looking at two different type of use of AI and machine learning. The first is more to embed generative system into creative software, because the main use of computers in the world right now is not the military anymore, it's not industry, it's creative computing. It's people using Photoshop, people editing videos, making sound design or music. And for those software, you would notice there's very little automation, very little AI, very little machine learning. What we call a creative worker now in the game industry or in the digital art industry is someone who sits on a computer, in front of a computer, clicking on buttons in a software they didn't develop all day long, every day. So we feel we can do better than in terms of creativity, and so we're interested in seeing if AI and machine learning can be integrated in the tools so that you can interact with those tools to create faster, to eventually explore more different options. Because if you've been clicking on a design or a montage or an editing for like 6 hours, you're not gonna start from scratch just to see if you can get somewhere else. Like, you are gonna try to finish and that's it, right? So there's in fact very little exploration. Sometimes you undo a few operations and you start a different direction, but there's not as much exploration with digital work than there should be, we feel. And so we want to develop those tools. So that's one direction. The second direction is embedded generative systems, where we believe, and that's something that is common with all my colleagues, artists, designers, and scientists that are brought together in this interdisciplinary program that is the School of Interactive Arts and Technology. We all believe that to develop good interactive systems, eventually we have to embed generative AI and machine learning systems inside the interaction. And I'll explain why. It has to do with the fact that if you want an interaction that lasts for a long time, then you want to keep the interaction in the flow zone, as we call it. So if you take like any interactive experience, it can be an interactive art, which is what we specialize on, but it can also be an educational system or a game. If the experience is too boring and there's not much happening, it's too easy, for example, a game is really easy, there's nothing at stake, then you're gonna get bored and you're gonna stop. If it's too complicated, too hard, too discouraging, then you're gonna get bored and you're gonna stop. So you need to keep you in that zone where the interaction is working out. And that zone depends on different people have a different zone in a way. And also, as you interact, you will learn from the interaction. A little bit like when you meet someone, at first you get simple conversations, and then as you get to know that person, you deepen the conversation in one direction or another. And that direction, you can't predict ahead of time. And so the best way to regenerate a compelling experience in any interactive system eventually is that you generate the right experience for the right interaction at the right moment, like we do when we talk, where I'm not going to talk with you the same way I talk with someone else. Why would an interactive system act the same way with someone than with someone else? So we do it that way right now because we're limited, but eventually as AI develop, we want an interactive system to be smarter, basically. And so we do those two types of scientific work in the lab, and because we generate a lot of generative systems to do so, we also make artwork with those generative systems. And I've been really interested in generative art for the longest time. I teach it at the university, and I think it's a fascinating domain in which really you get to craft the process, and then the process is run by a machine. And the same way that musicians write scores that then an orchestra will interpret. In a way, when you program a computer, it's like a score, and the computer is your orchestra, and it's gonna do what you want. So it's like being Yoko Ono or being John Cage and developing, performance art, except that you have a little slave, or sometimes an army of slaves that is gonna just perform for you, and that's the computer. And so, because I have this expertise in AI and in machine learning, both at the scientific level, being, a program chair committee for some of the largest AI conference, I know a little bit what's happening there, and so we've been using some of those AI systems for our own artwork production. And And so we've been developing musical agents. I worked actually with an artist originating from Turkey, Kıvanç Tatar. We worked on playing live on stage with musical agents which would have learned, music by listening to CDs, like everyone else, like most experimental musician I know, you learn music by listening to it. But with computers, you can get computers to listen to more music than a human can. And so what would this computer learn and how would it react? And so we did that series of performances. And then we've been interested in movement generation and dance generation, and then recently into video generation. And so that's where the piece that is showed as the Distopya Festival comes in really. It's one of the first times we had another system called DG MVP, the music video producer, that was doing some sort of video collage. You give it sound and it gives you a video. But this time we went at it with neural networks, which is one of the most popular techniques of the rise of AI these days. And so we trained a type of neural network called a GAN, generative adversarial neural network, and with our own data set of abstract images, abstract scenes, abstract movie pieces, and abstract painting. Some abstract painting from the Met collection, for example, like the US. Now there's more and more artistic data online. And so here again, this idea is that this neural network, I've seen a lot of artwork, and then it has built a latent space of all the possible type of art that we have been training that network on. So it's like a little baby, and we get to decide what aesthetic it's going to have, because we get to expose it only to what we want the network to know, and not anything else. And so we control the aesthetic that way, and then in the latent space we just move from one frame to another, and the movement is directed by the music, right? And so the music features are making the movement, and that's why when you watch the Autolume MZ-Ton video, you see that the video and the music are sort of vibing together, because literally they are exploring the same space and with the same type of dynamics. And then the music itself is actually a piece that is already a few years old, but that I liked and was fitting well for this. And it's a piece by a collective I'm part of that's called Autolume. It's a French collective, and we do sort of generative music, but with analog synthesizers. And so typically the process is actually quite interesting. It's almost like an algorithm. We bring all our machines together, and then we plug the machines to each other. So modular synthesizers typically, and then all of a sudden my machine is controlled a lot by what the others are doing, and my machine is also controlling what the others are doing, and it ends up being a rhizome or a network that is very complex. And typically we play like a game where I would touch one knob, and then nobody touch anything. Maybe he'll do nothing, maybe he'll change everything. Typically he would change things, and then sometime he would trigger something, and for 10 minutes things are happening, and then you're like, ooh. And then it's someone else's turn, another musician's turn, to touch one knob, and then or to press one key or do one operation, and then see what happens. And so it's interesting, because then you get to interact again with the machine, but where you pause an action, and then you just observe, and you become spectator of your own artwork for a while. And that's something that I like in general with generative art. And so it's true with the music and the work we do with Autolume, and they do in France. Now that I left France and I'm based in Canada. But it's also true with the neural network, where we get to just discover with the audience the content that is being generated. In fact, if it was not COVID, we would have loved to have come ourselves to get, of course, in Istanbul, and then it would have been more of a generative version, where we would have brought our own computers, and in fact the system generates the visuals in real time. And so in a way, each time we play the music, it could be different visuals. And also we have quite a lot of work that we've done on generative music, so we could have generating the music, and then the video is also generated, and then it's a very very dynamic piece. Yeah, so that's what we thought, and we thought it was fitting well with the theme of the Distopya Sound Art Festival this year, because neural networks, in a way, are a good embodiment in terms of technology of a lot of the fear that are happening with the rise of artificial intelligence and with this idea of autonomous machine, and we like to play with that, with the idea that, the critical notion that machines could replace artists or machine could be creative. Personally, as a professor and as a researcher in the area of creative AI, I really want to always emphasize that no, behind the machine there's always humans. In fact, it's complicated and painful enough to program those machines that it is not the machine that makes the art, it's the human who programmed it. And in a way, often when you see a generative art piece, you're like, oh, there's no work, it's just generating new content like that. But what you forget is often there's years and years of work to actually just get the machine to not be just random, bad quality things. And so in a way, some of the artwork that require the most work that I've seen are generative artwork, just because it's so much work to get it to function properly. I can do a painting in half a day, no problem. I can't develop a generative artwork in half a day. So I want to always emphasize that, and it's also a practice that really allows good dialogue with the way the world is running now, because computing and computerization of society has been really systematic, quite brutal. It's not a democratic process. Nobody voted for us to use computers every day, all day long. This is not something that emerged, and so I believe that really we need a high level of computational literacy, and we need to make sure that we are in control of those machines, and with the one who are capable of programming them and get them to do what we want, as opposed to become eventually a little bit prisoner of those machines. If you get to use software that you don't get to develop, they don't necessarily have exactly the functionality you want, and all of a sudden you have to do all those sequence of clicks to make things happen, and it becomes almost like chain work, and a lot of creative studio I know, it looks like chain work back in the days, just like people all in front of their computer, not talking to each other, clicking on buttons, trying to do exactly what they did yesterday but with a different content. And they can't tell the computer, hey, I'm designing a poster, this is the last 3 posters I made, this is new content, give me 5 examples. No, you're gonna have to click your way through. And eventually, I personally hate working with computers, and I think that's where it comes from. My passion for artificial intelligence is I think the machine should work more, and I should work less. And therefore I want to elevate the level of the interaction. So that's really the idea behind Autolume and Zinton. And I have to say, the first of what will probably be a series of pieces, and we're going to generate more video, and we really hope to so it's a collaboration with German artist and researcher who is now doing graduate studies with me at Fraser University, Jonas Kratsch. And then we have a version of the system where we have a MIDI controller where we can both receive the audio signal and have the video being generated, but also manipulate in the latent space various dimensions of the generation. So you can then manipulate the visuals like a VG would do, and it'll be like mixed initiative, co-creative VGing, where the network does a lot of the work, but you also get to control it in real time. So we're interested in that idea. So we can have semi-automated VGing and then musical agents playing with us on stage, as well as we like to play ourselves live and improvise. So we're preparing a show that will be like a building up on what you have right now at Istanbul at the gallery. Yeah.